Members, a quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for today's prayer. We ask Assembly Chaplain Father Constantine Papadimos to offer today's prayer.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, you know what we are really like. You know us through and through. If we're an honest person, we will be comfortable with that thought. If we're dishonest, we will feel uncomfortable. Guide us to follow you with the words we use, the thoughts we think, and by the way we treat others, personally and honestly. Amen.
We ask everyone present to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Butler as she leads us in the pledge. Ms. Butler.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Thursday, March 10, 2011. The Assembly met at 9 a.m. Honorable Fiona Moss, Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly, presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dawson Wilson at the desk. Reading Clerk Timothy Moreland. Reading the roll was called. Shajian Alejo, Allen, Amiano, Atkins, Bell, Berry
Mr.
Hill.
Allen moves and Mr. Hagman seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions, there are none. Introduction references of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon, you're recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly members Conway, Perea, and V. Manuel Perez to have guests and photographs on the floor today.
Without objection.
Likewise, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45 to allow Assembly members Allen, Furtani, Portantino, Wachowski to speak on adjourned memory today.
Without objection.
Pursuant to Rule 96, I request unanimous consent to refer the following bill to committee. That's AB 675 by Mr. Hagman to the Business and Professions and Consumer Protection Committee.
Without objection. Okay, we have some members here who would like to introduce guests. Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to welcome the Neighborhood House Association of San Diego County to the Assembly floor today. The NHA is the largest multi-purpose human service agency helping thousands of families improve their lives through social services like employment, health care, child, family, and senior services. Your service is to be commended, and welcome to the State Assembly today. Thank you.
Ms. Conway.
Hello. Oh, okay. Thank you. Good morning. And thank you, Mr. Speaker
Calderon,
and members.
I'm sorry, Mr. Calderon, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, could you ask members to please take their seats?
Members, please take your seats and give Ms. Conway the floor. Thank you.
All righty then. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, all of the Mr. Speakers and Madam Speaker and members. I'd like to welcome the members of the California Central Valley Economic Development Corporation this morning. They're in Sacramento to speak about economic development issues that are vital to the Central Valley economy. CCVEDC is comprised of the 8 economic development authorities in the San Joaquin Valley and also serves as the key economic development consultant to the California Partnership for the San Joaquin Valley. The counties include Kern, Kings, Tulare, Fresno, Madera, Merced, Stanislaus, and San Joaquin. Please join me in welcoming them this morning.
Mr. Calderon.
Mr. Calderon, we have another motions and resolution.
Mr. Speaker, members are requesting unanimous consent to allow Assemblymember Norma Torres to have guests and photographers on the floor and to make an introduction.
Without objection. Ms. Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a very special group of students, high school students from my district, that are here today representing the following schools: Chaffee, Chino, Colony, Don Lugo, Diamond Ranch, Ganesha, and Montclair. They have served in my office for 2 years as the 61st Youth Advisory Committee, advising me on issues related to our youth. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you have learned a lot from our members and also the third house, which they met with today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Perea.
Mr. Speaker, members, I would like to recognize Sanger Unified Superintendent Marcus Johnson. His stellar guidance as superintendent of Sanger Unified earned him national recognition by the American Association of School Administrators as the 2011 National Superintendent of the Year. I would like to commend him for his honor and his steadfast commitment to restructuring the district schools into professional learning centers focused on student learning, high-quality instruction, and teacher collaboration. Accompanying Superintendent Johnson today is Principal John Yost of Washington Academic Middle School. And a few of the exceptional students that are with us in the gallery, I'd like to ask you all to please stand. From Sanger Unified, we have Megan Filder, Amanda Gomez, Margaret Wash, Amy Vasquez, and Anthony Pimentel, who are all with us here in the gallery. Can you please give them all a round of applause? Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Johnson.
Ms. Carter? No? Okay, we'll pass that. Okay, I'd also like to recognize a group of students from Glendale Community College. Would you please stand up and be recognized? Everyone, please give them a warm welcome. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to business. Yes, Mr. Calderon, they are from my district. We're going to move to business on the daily file. Assembly third reading. So we're now going to move to a resolution relative to Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Week. Mr. Dickinson, our clerk will read.
Assembly concur Resolution 18 by Assemblymember Dickinson relative to Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Week.
Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, ACR 18 proclaims March 14th to March 18th as Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Week. MS is a chronic, often disabling disease that affects the central nervous system and is often very difficult to diagnose. Symptoms may be mild, such as fatigue and numbness, or as severe as paralysis and loss of vision. According to the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, more than 400,000 people living in the United States and more than 40,000 living in California suffer from MS. This is not just an academic matter to me. My father had multiple sclerosis, and I lost a sister-in-law to multiple sclerosis. I lost an aunt to multiple sclerosis. This is a disease which fundamentally affects not just the quality of life, but the ability to participate in life fully. Women are more likely than men to be diagnosed with MS, and most patients are diagnosed between the ages of 20 and 50. African Americans with MS are more prone to the severe end of the disease and the most disabling symptoms. There's no cure. There's no cure for MS. But raising awareness is the key to educating the public about sharing information regarding the disease, about stimulating research so that we hopefully one day do have that cure, and to make sure that people know of the treatments that are available for those living with MS. We have a number of people with us from the National Multiple Sclerosis Society California Action Network in the gallery, and I hope that you will acknowledge them this morning. I also am lucky enough to have a few bracelets for those of you who are the first to get over here and ask for them, that are the symbol of raising awareness about this terrible disease. Mr. Speaker, I would respectfully ask for an aye vote on this resolution and ask that the first roll be opened for co-authors.
Mr. Chesbrough.
What's that? Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this resolution. MS is a disease that has touched my life very personally. My wife, Cindy, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when my older son was born 24 years ago. She is the bravest person that I know. When she gets up in the morning to do the things that all of us take for granted, it takes an enormous amount of effort and determination and optimism that I have a hard time even imagining. She's been fortunate compared to many people who struggle with MS in that she's been able to raise two sons while married to an elected official of all things, and complete her master's degree and be a community college instructor. She goes through her days coping with a tremendous amount of physical challenge, and yet she's pulled all those things off. I'm in support of this resolution in honor of and support of all of the brave people who have been diagnosed with this disease but who managed to go through life and face the challenges effectively. They deserve no less than this support from us and raising public awareness and trying to bring support to trying to find better treatments and cures for this devastating illness. Thank you very much. I urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Mr. Dickinson has asked that the first roll be opened for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Let it be noted we have 67 co-authors, so we can move to a voice vote on this measure. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The measure passes. We're going to move to ACR 23, a resolution relevant to Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. Clerk will read.
Assembly concur Resolution 23 by Assemblymember Ma and others relative to Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. ACR 23 designates the month of March 2011 as Colorectal Awareness Month in effort to increase discussion and need for early detection. The myth is that colon cancer affects older men. However, colon cancer is the second most common cause of cancer-related death for both men and women in California. 65% of patients have a 5-year survival rate due to low prognostic exams and early detection. However, according to the Institute of Medicine, access to colon screening facilities could reduce mortality rates associated with this disease by up to 80%. Strides for Life, a nonprofit advocacy group from my district, works to raise awareness about colon cancer and to provide underserved populations with access to life-saving screenings. Strides for Life brought up Carol the Super Colon, the giant inflatable colon that is on the north lawn of the Capitol today, in an effort to raise the awareness of this dangerous illness. You can see it and walk through it until 5 p.m. today. Members, please go down there, take pictures, post it on your Facebook, tweet it, help us raise the awareness. It does get a lot of attention and a lot of thumbs up on your Facebook pages. If we work together as a community, we can successfully work toward implementing programs to increase knowledge of this preventable disease, as well as access to detection and treatment facilities for all Californians. I'd like to ask for the first roll to be open for co-authors. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I rise to support my colleague in encouraging men to have this examination. I know we don't like talking about it, but my 81-year-old father convinced me that this was really a painless exercise, and my physician convinced me that this is an activity that will help save my life and other men's lives if they simply experience a little discomfort to open up to an examination that really is painless. And so I'd encourage all men to participate in this examination, because it's really it can save your life, and it can save the lives of your children, because it will help you understand whether or not there's any predispositions that exist. And so I encourage all of you to do it. It's easy for me to say since I've done it, and I didn't leave smiling, but I left relaxed and with a sound sense of mind. Thank you very much. I encourage your vote aye.
Seeing and hearing no further discussion on this matter, Ms. Ma has asked that the first roll be open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, and we note that this measure has 71 co-authors. We can then proceed to a voice vote on this measure. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The measure passes. We're going to move to a resolution related to Peace Corps Month. This is H.R. 8. Clerk will read.
House Resolution 8 by Assemblymember Valadao relative to the Peace Corps Month.
Mr. Valadao.
Mr. Speaker and members, H.R. 8 is a resolution that declares the month of March 2011 as Peace Corps Month in California and commends the United States Peace Corps for the occasion of its 50th anniversary. President John F. Kennedy signed the executive order establishing the Peace Corps on March 1, 1961, as a means to promote world peace and friendship by encouraging progress, creating opportunity, and expanding development at the grassroots level in the world. The first director of the Peace Corps was the late Sergeant Shriver, our former First Lady Maria Shriver's father. This resolution is a small token of recognition for the more than 200,000 Americans who have served as Peace Corps volunteers in 139 countries since 1961. California is the largest source of volunteers in the nation, with 27,300 men and women serving over the past 50 years. Peace Corps volunteers have made significant and lasting contributions to, in the world of agriculture, education, health, business development, and the environment. Please join me in honoring the Peace Corps. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I ask that the first roll be open for co-authors.
Seeing and hearing no further discussion or debate on this matter, Mr. Valadao has asked that the first roll be open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, and we note that we have 71 co-authors on this matter. We can now proceed to voice vote for this measure. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The measure passes. We're going to move to Senate Concurrent Resolution 8, a matter related to Sunshine Week. Mr. Gurel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, fellow members.
I'm sorry. Clerk will read.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 8 by Senator Yi relative to Sunshine Week.
Mr. Gurel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, fellow members. SCR 8 designates March 13th through the 19th, 2011 as Sunshine Week, a national nonpartisan observance to promote the dialogue about the importance of open government and the freedom of information. The will of the people and the consent of the governed provide for our government's legitimacy. This week-long effort encourages Californians to participate at a greater level in their government. Sunshine Week began with journalists at the Florida Society of News Reporters who launched Sunshine Sunday in 2002 with the goal of increasing public awareness of government actions and promoting transparency. Open government provides for safer, healthier communities through sharing of records and information. Over the past few years, Sunshine Week has successfully focused public attention on examples throughout the state of both effective and failed models of government transparency, prompting media attention. SCR 8 will help increase public awareness, will help hold public policymakers accountable, and promote government transparency. Mr. Speaker, I respectfully ask for an aye vote and that the first roll be open for co-authors.
Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to urge all of my colleagues to support this resolution. There are national organizations that also promote sunshine throughout the country, and I am sad to report that California ranks towards the bottom of our ease of access for our average citizens just to know what we're doing. Last year I ran 3 bills trying to increase sunshine in California. I hope that you'll take a look at a couple more this year, because we have got to do a better job of engaging our citizens to participate in government, and part of the way we do that is by letting the sunshine in and making sure that everyone has access in the easiest way possible. So I urge your aye vote.
Mr. Norby.
I'll state for the record I do support reading, rectal exams, the Peace Corps, and sunshine. However, I've never voted for any of these, and I won't, because I do believe there's better uses for our time than to continue to have, what we have, about 5 resolutions that really won't affect anyone's attitude toward us other than, where's the budget?
Thank you, Mr. Norby. Mr. Gurel, you may close.
Well, that's difficult to follow, Mr. Speaker, but I want to thank Mr. Norby and Ms. Huber for their comments and respectfully ask for your aye vote, and would ask, again, open a call for first roll for co-authors. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gurel has asked that the first roll be open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Let the record note that we have, our clerk will close the roll and let the record show that we have 70 co-authors for this matter. We can now move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The measure carries. Members, this concludes business on the daily file. We're going to move to some announcements, and we have Mr. V. Manny Perez, who would like to introduce his guests.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Please join me in welcoming a delegation of leaders from the Ukraine. They are participating in the Library of Congress's Open World program. This program brings emerging world leaders from Eurasian countries to the United States in order to give them first-hand exposure to the American system of participatory democracy and free enterprise. Open World delegates include some of Ukraine's most dynamic, highly educated, emerging leaders who are eager to share their experiences with Americans for a mutually beneficial exchange of ideas. We'd like to welcome you to the United States and the state of California. Round of applause.
Okay, members, session schedule is as follows. Tuesday, March 15th, we have floor session upon call of the Speaker and check-in session. Wednesday, March 16th, we have floor session upon call of the Speaker and check-in session. Thursday, March 17th, floor session at 9 a.m. Friday, March 18th, floor session upon call of the Speaker. Oh, we also have another announcement. Mr. Knight would like to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to recognize my legislative director, who's in the back. Megan Abadara has been my legislative director for the last 3 years. She started out as a fellow and then worked for Assemblywoman Sharon Runner, and now she's moving on to bigger things, and we wish her all the best. She has helped me immensely in the last 3 years, and as we all know, legislative directors are very instrumental in what we do. And so I'd like to thank Megan for all that she's done and wish her the best.
Okay, all other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. We're now going to move to adjourn in memories. Members, please take your seats for the adjourn in memories. The following members were previously granted permission to speak on adjourn in memories today. Mr. Allen, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, I'm asking that today we adjourn in memory of Mr. Art Grubel. Art Grubel was a labor leader for over 30 years. He represented workers in Solano County before working for SEIU 1000. He was also a good friend and contemporary of Gary Bingham, who passed away a few weeks ago. He represented the best in the labor movement because he was concerned about just not the workers he represented, but all working families in California. There will be a ceremony in his memory at the Universal Life Church in March 27th in Sacramento. And he will be remembered for someone who cared about people, had a great sense of humor, and remembered that in negotiations you need to be creative and have courage. Thank you.
Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. As I've run into people coming to session today, the usual salutation of how was your weekend or how's everything going was of course asked. And as this weekend unfolded after Friday, it's been sort of strange, to be very candid and frank. I mean, I did keep track of who made the big dance in the NCAA tournament from local basketball teams. I did watch a movie with my wife, but one eye was always on television as I looked at the catastrophe in Japan unfold. I'm a fourth-generation Japanese American, like my good friend Mariko Yamada, third and fourth generation as well. We are considerably removed from our experience from Japan. When on the Board of Education, I remember I had an invitation to meet the Emperor of Japan, and I thought, hey, this is pretty big stuff, and I said, I'm going to bring my mother. She'll really know her son has arrived because he's going to go have lunch with the Emperor of Japan. And I asked my mom to come with me, and she said, well, I don't know because the Emperor doesn't mean anything to me. I'm Japanese American. And for me, it's been an interesting process of dealing with that being American, but having Japanese ethnicity as a part of my life. I mean, I remember when we talked about World War II, I would always sort of feel badly when we discussed the bombing of Pearl Harbor and wanting to tell people I wasn't there, I didn't do it. And other things happening with some of the bills and experiences I've had about the concentration camps the Japanese were put in during World War II. And then how during the Olympic Games, I always keep track of how the Japanese team is doing. So when this earthquake happened on Friday, and, you know, it's the generation that we are of, where you get to see all of this real time, not in retrospect, not after the fact, but it's like you're standing on a bluff in northern Japan on the coastline watching this tsunami. Tsunami itself is a term, a Japanese term for tidal wave, has become popularized as a term everybody uses for tidal wave around the world. Come rolling in this power of Mother Nature, and no matter what Japan did as one of the first world nations, one of the most technically advanced nations in the world, had to sit there in that pathway and wait for it to hit. And when it did, I don't care what kind of technology you had, it didn't matter one iota, because Mother Nature and what took place with the earthquake. An 8.9, and we all are from California, so we know earthquakes. So 8.9 is a little bit hard to compute, right? Because the way it unfolds in terms of the magnitude of an earthquake isn't a logical logarithm or a equation that unfolds it. It jumps and leaps as this power expands. So what's happened there with now 1,800 people recorded deaths, we know doesn't anywhere near represent the actual number that it's ultimately going to be. And as you watch it on television and you see the cars and the homes just roll on by, and it isn't a disaster movie. It isn't Hollywood technology and special effects that's unfolding. It's real life. So this issue of the earthquake, this issue of watching to what happened, and just as a Japanese American that has some connection, but this is about the human family and what can happen to anybody, anywhere, no matter how big or strong your nation might be. And so coming in and talking about, you know, the international airport where we all flew out of, a lot of us this morning, it would have been covered with water, absolutely. These kinds of things that touch us as members of the human family really have something to be said relative to our body, the legislature. Because what can we do to help? I'm working with the Speaker in his office as we look at the different information about how we can help. Looking at the community organizations where you have Japanese American constituents and churches and Buddhist temples and community centers in your district, how can we help? But no matter where it is on the Ring of Fire, no matter what country that gets affected, these kinds of unfolding of human tragedy and the power of Mother Nature is undeniable and something we can't control. So out of our control, to a certain extent, to a large extent, we still can do something about it. So we're working with the Speaker's office for ways all of us in the legislature can have information available that we can share with our constituents, share with others that are asking how can they help as we reach out to our sisters and brothers in Japan during this very dark time and very difficult time. And everybody is watching one other thing, and that's the nuclear reactors. The nuclear reactors, and what's going to happen with that. And it's going to be a statement about the future ultimately in terms of nuclear power, much of which we're going to have to learn from and deal with as we look at these issues of how we're going to deal with energy for our future. So I know we have others to speak, but Mr. Speaker, after they do, I would like to ask for a moment of silence.
Sure. Ms. Halderman.
Thank you, sir. I would like to share Mr. Ferrantini's grief for the people of Japan and also offer that they had an extraordinary response both in the early warning for the tsunami and the medical relief afterwards. Both the Nation of Israel and the American College of Surgeons contacted the Nation of Japan through its ambassador 1 hour after the quake and offered assistance. The Nation of Japan has a disaster preparedness team that is equal in quality to both of our countries. And I would like to say I admire that, and I hope we can improve our own disaster preparedness. The difference when we are not prepared was something I witnessed in October 2009 when the tsunami hit American Samoa. And an equivalent number of Californians, population-based, it would be as though 14,000 Californians had perished in that tsunami. So my prayers, again, are that we continue a rescue until we have to do recovery, and my thoughts are with you.
Ms. Yamada, or I'm sorry, Mr. Calderon.
A point of information, Mr. Speaker. Are we now in the file where we adjourn in memories of those who have passed on?
Yes, we are. Ms. Yamada.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, for those of you who have known me a little bit longer, I rarely rise on this floor to do adjourn in memories. But in this case, I want to thank first Mr. Furutani for bringing this forward. This does have a very close personal connection for me because on April 10th, 1903, my father was born in Miyagi-ken in the village of Shiroishi, which is in the Sendai area. That community, of course, had become a city over this past 108 years, if he were alive to see it. We do not know the fate of those who were in Shiroishi. We believe they are probably going to be counted amongst the casualties as the recovery period continues. But I just want to take this moment to say thank you to all of you, both here as well as out in the community and throughout California, and actually friends of mine throughout the country that have asked about my family. I can tell you that it was just yesterday morning that we were able to first reestablish some connection and contact with family members who thankfully are no longer living so close to Sendai. They have moved out to other areas in Japan. But I can very much relate with what Mr. Furutani said as a Sansei/Yonsei generation, third, fourth generation Japanese Americans that we are. I've only spent 10 days of my life of the past 60 years visiting Japan. So although the direct connection may not be there, that is still our homeland, after all, through the generations. And this disaster no one could prepare for. Japan, of course, as we know, is probably one of the most well-prepared countries in the world to address earthquakes. But the tsunami, no one could have prepared for. And I think what I'd like to send here as another message locally, and we know that there were local impacts here in California. Mr. Chesbrough and I were on the conference call Saturday, I believe it was, with CalEMA, as they were updating us on the local impacts that the tsunami had on California. We know that there have been damages that have occurred in Mr. Chesbrough's district, Mr. Hill's district, and others. And so I think the message that I am trying to impart is that we are one global family, that things that occur, no matter where they occur in the world, can affect us almost instantaneously, and that it should underscore our own vulnerabilities, that we need to be prepared ourselves to make sure that our own families and our own constituencies understand that disaster can strike at any moment and that we should be prepared. And I'd also like to just make the statement that those who are on the front lines of addressing disaster are public servants, by and large. And I applaud their service and their sacrifice and wish to just say thank you to all of those who put their lives on the line for us every day, even when we don't know that. They're on duty 24/7, 365 on our behalf, not only here but throughout the world. Thank you very much, members.
Mr. Calderon.
Let me just rise to a point of order. We are in adjourn in memory, where we remember those who have contributed to the state, to this country, to history, those who have contributed to our lives, our loved ones, our friends, and would simply ask that members remember that when we stand adjourn in memory, to adjourn in memory of someone of that character.
Mr. Speaker.
Apropos of the previous comment, members, I ask that you rise and join me in a moment of silence for all those who died as a result of the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, including the one life that we know and others that we potentially don't know that perished here in California as a result of the tsunami's implication across the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue with adjourn in memories. Members, Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I rise to honor two constituents of mine. One gentleman who many of you are familiar, I would ask this body to adjourn in memory of William Bill Houston. Mr. Houston, who was 83, was widely recognized throughout California as a leader in economic and industrial development. He died peaceably on Wednesday, March 9th at Good Samaritan Hospital, and his service is actually at my home church of St. Bede's as we speak now. For over 40 years, Mr. Houston was at the helm of the Watson Land Company, directing one of the country's largest industrial office park operations and one of the state's oldest enterprises with a long and storied history in California. Mr. Houston and his wife Sue were married for 56 years. He was a devoted husband and father. He leaves behind 8 children and their spouses. He also left a legacy of love to his 18 grandchildren. One of his granddaughters is actually on my daughter's softball team in La Cañada Flint Ridge. The litany of Bill Houston's invaluable contributions to the greater Los Angeles community includes his serving as the president of the California Chamber of Commerce and director of the National Association of Industrial Office Parks, as well as the California Statewide Economic and Job Development Committee. The contributions of Bill Houston, however, went well beyond the development of industrial property, business, and politics. Deeply committed to passing on the legacy of a quality Catholic education to future generations, Bill Houston devoted much of his time, talent, and resources to ensuring that children within the Archdiocese of Los Angeles who otherwise not be able to afford such an education would have the opportunity to learn in fine Catholic schools. In 1995, Bill received the Cardinals Award. In 1997, he received the Elizabeth Seton Award, the NCEA's highest honor, given in recognition of significant contributions to Catholic education. Bill sat on the Board of Regents of Santa Clara University, the Board of Visitors of Loyola Law School, Santa Clara Law School, and on the Renewal Committee of Loyola Marymount University School of Business Administration. He also served Pepperdine University as an associate on the university's board, as well as the board of University of Notre Dame Law School, and supporter of Gonzaga University, Thomas Aquinas College. He received multiple honors and awards for his service, including the Pontifical Order of the Knights of St. Gregory in 1994. This order was established in 1831. The knighthood seeks to recognize those who have promoted the interests of society, the Church, and the Holy See. As I said, his services today, this gentleman sat in front of me in church on Sunday. He was a great man, a great Californian, and I respectfully ask this body to adjourn in his memory.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also would like to stand and recognize Mr. Bill Houston. I had the honor of meeting him 25 years ago, in 1986, when I came home from my service in the Reagan administration. I found him to be everything that my colleague from La Cañada, who had the privilege of representing him here, to be. A true gentleman, someone who loved his church very much and spent a lot of time and dedication to his country, in both serving in World War II during with the Navy and also as a member of the FBI. His dedication to his family, as my colleague mentioned, is left behind his wife, 8 children, and 18 grandchildren. But he also had a deep appreciation for the law and a love of our country, as that law, as that we all respect and pledge to uphold every day when we take that pledge, the Constitution represents, and his belief in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, in combination with that individual ability to excel and those rights, things like property rights. He also joined, or actually was one of the original founders I wanted to mention, because every day I come in here and we look up, sometimes we take this room too frequently for granted. I don't know how any of us can, or none of us should. But the magnificence of this room, combined with the picture of Abraham Lincoln, Bill Houston founded the Lincoln Clubs of California in 1986 and was truly a patriot. And with that, I ask that we adjourn in memory. Thank you.
Mr. Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, want to add my voice in adjournment to the life of Mr. Bill Houston. He was an individual who I had opportunity to work with for a number of years when I served as region manager for the Southern California Edison in the city of Carson. And when you drive through the city of Carson and you admire all the great development, I can assure you Bill Houston's name is somewhere, or his imprint is somewhere on all those buildings, be it the Dominguez Hills Technological Center, the Watson Land Development, all the corporations that are now located in the Carson and Dominguez areas due to the vision of Mr. Bill Houston. He was part of the Dominguez land grant family, so his involvement in the state of California spreads far and wide. So I also want to extend my condolences also to his family. I had opportunity to work closely with his son, Tom Houston, and even had opportunity to enjoy a Dodger game or two with the Houston family. So I, too, add my voice of adjournment to Mr. Bill Houston.
Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise today for a second sad occurrence, the passing of Martin Marootian. Mr. Marootian died February 25th of natural causes. This is a man whose legacy touched all of us and fought for things that many of us can only imagine. The recognition of the Armenian genocide, and in particular, the restitution for victims of the Armenian genocide. In 1999, Mr. Marootian joined a legal battle to force New York Life to honor policies purchased by more than 2,000 Armenians, most of whom perished in what some historians call or have described as the first genocide of the 20th century. The cause of their death has long been disputed by the Turkish government, which has maintained that the Armenians were casualties of war, not targets of persecution. Mr. Marootian fought that battle to his last breath. He led the efforts to get restitution, and his lawyers said at the time, Mr. Marootian was not interested in money, but the restitution of Armenian history. He was the spearhead in that lawsuit. This is a man who rejected a settlement that was offered to just him because he saw the injustice that was present and said, I can't take personal gain if the entire community doesn't share in this. He also forced the settlement to set aside $3 million to other nonprofits to do the same advocacy. He was born in New York in 1915. He grew up in Connecticut and Rhode Island and worked to pay his way through Connecticut School of Pharmacy and graduated in 1939. After the war, he married Seda Garapedian, and in 1955 they settled in Pasadena. And over the next several decades, he worked in pharmacies in Pasadena and Glendale, and he and his wife lived in La Cañada, Flint Ridge for more than 35 years until Seda's death in 2007. Mr. Marootian was a student of Armenian history who took part in annual commemorations of the genocide. He also spoke and testified before this body. He treasured a 1905 family portrait of 11 relatives that included his uncle, who in 1910 purchased the policy with New York Life. Of the 11, the only two who survived the massacre were his mother and his older sister. His legacy will continue. The justice that was righted will forever seal his wonderful contribution to this great state, and I respectfully ask for this body to adjourn in his memory.
Mr. Chadjian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also stand here in recognizing of Martin Marootian for all of his personal sacrifices in fighting for preserving the rights of my ancestors. I respectfully ask that we adjourn this meeting in his memory. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Wachowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in memory of the Honorable Bill McMillan. He was on the Ohlone Community College District Board of Trustees. Bill passed away this weekend after battling leukemia for over 2 years. He was a Stanford grad, had a degree in mathematics and a master's in education. He worked as a math teacher, an aviation teacher, a middle school principal, and was a statewide coordinator in the New York school system. From 1994 to 2002, he served on the Newark Unified School District, and in 2002, he was elected to Ohlone College Board. Despite numerous rounds of chemotherapy and bone marrow stem cell transplant, Bill passed this Saturday. He was an active community member, and he coached Little League and soccer. He has 2 children he's left behind, Mike and Maya. Bill got into public service for the kids. It was as simple as that. He'll be remembered for his warm personality and his courage during this difficult time. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Please bring those names to the desk to be printed in the journal. I am told we have one more announcement. Ms. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I apologize for the lateness of this, but I'd like for you to welcome former Assembly Member John Longville, who brought his political science class from San Bernardino Valley College here today. The students started out at midnight riding a bus here because they wanted to come up here to urge us to remember the community college students in our budget. So I would like to introduce several dozen. There's over 50 up there in the audience, and I think Mr. Longville is. Could you please stand? If you could all join me in welcoming them here. I'm sure Mr. Longville is walking around the, oh, where is he? Over there. Welcome, Mr. Longville.
Okay, I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon moves. Ms. Conway seconds. At this, oh, I'm sorry. I see a mic up. Mr. Nielsen.
Mr. Speaker and members, let me also acknowledge Mr. John Benoit, a former esteemed member of this House and then the State Senate. He has now adjourned to be a supervisor. Welcome back, John.
Okay, now I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon moves. Ms. Conway seconds. At this House stand adjourned until call of the Speaker or Thursday, March 17 at 9 a.m. Quorum call is lifted.